Bob Marley had performed Redemption's song hundreds of times. He knew every note, every breath, every moment. But on that August night in Kingston, something happened that he would never forget for the rest of his life. A voice joined his, so perfect, so haunting, that it made him stop everything. When security brought the 8-year-old girl to him, her mother was crying. "The doctors were wrong," she whispered. "My daughter has never spoken until tonight." If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell because we uncover the hidden gems that shape the legends we know today. August 13, 1978, National Stadium, Kingston, Jamaica. The night air was hot and humid, but the 45,000 people packed into every seat didn't care. Bob Marley and the Wailers were on stage, and this wasn't just a concert. This was a spiritual gathering. Bob Marley was more than a musician in Jamaica. He was a prophet, a healer, the man who gave voice to millions who had been silenced. From the beginning of the concert, everything had been perfect. The crowd had erupted during One Love. They had shed tears during No Woman, No Cry. They had risen to their feet for Get Up, Stand Up. Now it was time for the deepest, most personal moment of the evening. Redemption's song. Bob walked to the center of the stage, cradled his acoustic guitar, and stood quietly before the microphone. A wave of hushed anticipation rippled through the stadium. Everyone knew this song was different. This song wasn't just meant to be heard. It was meant to be felt. When Bob's fingers touched the guitar strings, the opening chords floated into the air. His voice, that legendary spiritual voice, filled the stadium. "Old pirates, yes, they rob I." 45,000 people held their breath. This moment was sacred. "Sold I to the merchant ships." But right then, underneath Bob's voice, something shifted. At first, it was so faint, almost imperceptible. But Bob Marley's ear wasn't an ordinary ear. He could hear the silences within the music, and what he was hearing now was impossible. A harmony, perfect, pure, crystal clear. Bob continued singing, but his mind was elsewhere. His eyes began scanning the crowd. The harmony continued, dancing around his vocal line as if they had rehearsed together for years. But this was impossible. No backup vocalist had been planned for Redemption's song tonight. It was supposed to be just Bob and his guitar. Yet the voice was there, and it wasn't just accompanying, it was creating. The notes went to places Bob had never considered, but each one was perfect. Each one emotionally right. By the second verse, the harmony grew stronger. It was undeniable now. The stadium's acoustics carried it in every direction, and people were starting to notice. Heads began turning. People looked at each other. Who was making this sound? Bob's band had noticed too. Aston Family Man. Barrett furrowed his brow while playing his bass. Carlton Barrett kept drumming, but his eyes were scanning the crowd. Junior Marvin put down his guitar and just listened. But it was Bob who was most affected. Bob Marley had heard hundreds, thousands of voices, professional singers, trained musicians, talented amateurs. But this voice was different. This voice was timeless. This voice seemed to come from within the music itself, not from a human being. When he reached the bridge, Bob made a decision. He stopped singing. He raised his hand, the universal stop signal for the band. The music slowly cut out. The bass stopped. The drums went silent. The guitar faded. And then the stadium experienced something that had never happened in Bob Marley concert history. Complete silence. 45,000 people froze, trying to understand why the music had stopped. Bob leaned into his microphone. His voice was calm but determined. "Wait," he said. "Everybody wait." The crowd murmured in confusion. Was this a technical problem? Equipment failure? Bob spoke again, louder this time. "Somebody out there is singing. Somebody with a voice from Jah himself. I need to find you." The stadium was truly silent now. Everyone held their breath. "Please," Bob continued, his voice now almost pleading. "Whoever you are, sing again, just one more time. Let me hear you." 10 seconds passed, then 20. Nothing happened. Bob closed his eyes. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe the exhaustion, the travel, the pressure of performances had deceived him. Maybe. And then it happened. From the left side of the stadium, from the upper rows, a voice rose. Soft, trembling, but irresistibly beautiful. "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery." Bob's eyes opened. He turned his head in that direction. "None but ourselves can free our minds." The voice continued, now a bit stronger, but still delicate, still fragile. 45,000 people looked toward where the voice was coming from. Bob walked to the edge of the stage, put his hands to his ears, trying to follow the sound. The stadium lights were redirected to illuminate the crowd. Security personnel began speaking into their radios. "Section 14, Bob shouted. "Upper level, find her, please." It was that word. Her. Bob didn't know, hadn't seen yet, but he knew. The voice belonged to a woman, a girl. And that voice was about to teach him one of life's deepest truths. The next 10 minutes were the most surreal 10 minutes in Bob Marley's career. Security teams moved through the crowd. People tried to help, pointing to Section 14, directing toward the upper rows. Bob waited on stage, holding his microphone, his eyes never leaving that area. And then he saw movement. People were pulling aside. A corridor was forming. And in the middle of that corridor, beside a security guard, a young girl was walking. No, she wasn't walking. She was being carried. Someone else was coming behind her, an older woman. Her mother. Bob watched them, their images, tracked on the big screens throughout the stadium. The journey took several minutes, but finally they arrived. Bob knelt at the edge of the stage. The girl stood before him, about 8 years old, tiny. Her big brown eyes were filled with fear and curiosity. Her mother stood behind her, her face wet with tears. Bob smiled gently. "Hello, little sister," he said softly. "What's your name?" The girl opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her mother stepped forward, her hands trembling. "Mr. Marley," she said, her voice breaking. "Her name is Maya. And she can't speak." Bob's smile faded. "Can't speak?" The mother nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Since birth, doctors said her vocal cords didn't develop properly. She's never spoken, never cried, never made a sound for 8 years." The stadium was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Bob looked at Maya. Maya looked at him. "But I heard you," Bob said softly. "I heard you singing with me. I heard your voice adding to my song." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Her mother spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "She feels the music. When she hears your songs, she sings internally, but it never came out. Never actually made sound. That's why I don't understand what happened tonight." Bob reached for Maya, gently took her hand. "Maya," he said, "will you sing with me again?" Maya hesitated, then nodded with her small head. Bob stood up, holding Maya's hand. He brought her onto the stage. 45,000 people rose to their feet, applauding, crying, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Bob picked up his guitar. He adjusted the microphone so both he and Maya could be heard. "Sometimes," Bob said to the crowd, "music makes us speak more powerfully than words can. Sometimes music releases the voices within us, voices locked in silence." He began playing guitar. The opening notes of Redemption's song filled the air again. "Old pirates, yes, they rob I," Bob sang, and Maya stood beside him, eyes closed, completely trembling. "Sold I to the merchant ships." And then it happened. Maya opened her mouth, and a sound came out. Thin, trembling, but real. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. The stadium erupted, but Bob raised his hand, a signal to stay calm, to listen. And everyone listened. Maya continued singing. Every word was a miracle, Every note was impossible, but everything was real. Bob and Maya sang together. Their voices intertwined, completed each other, created something that everyone there that evening would remember for the rest of their lives. When the song ended, there was silence in the stadium. The kind of silence that comes from reverence, from awe, from something sacred. Then applause erupted. But this wasn't ordinary applause. This was applause mixed with tears. This was applause of faith. Bob knelt before Maya. He looked at her, into her eyes. "Maya," he said, "your voice is a gift from Jah. And tonight the world heard it," Maya cried. Her mother rushed onto the stage, took her daughter in her arms, and they cried together. Bob stood up, turned to the microphone. "Tonight," he said, "we were reminded of something important. None of us are truly silent. All of us have a song inside. We're just waiting for the right music to set it free." That night, after the concert ended, Bob spent an hour with Maya and her family. He asked her how she sang, what she felt. Maya couldn't speak. She had gone silent again, but her eyes told everything. The next day, the news spread. Bob Marley stops concert. Miracle happens. Mute girl speaks through Bob Marley's song. Music does what medicine couldn't. But the truth was more complex, more beautiful. Maya's mother, Grace, later explained in an interview, "Doctors said Maya's vocal cords were physically functional, but there was a psychological block. Trauma, fear, something locked her from within. She had treatment for years. Nothing worked. But that night when she heard Bob Marley's music, that block broke. For the first time, she felt safe. For the first time, she was set free." 3 days after the concert, Bob Marley did something unprecedented. He canceled 2 performances and flew back to Kingston. He showed up at Grace's small house in Trenchtown, the same neighborhood where Bob himself had grown up. "I told Maya I would come back," Bob said simply. "Is she here?" Maya appeared, wearing a simple yellow dress. When she saw Bob, her face lit up with a smile, but she didn't speak. The miracle of that night had been temporary. The psychological block had returned. Bob didn't seem surprised. He sat down and picked up an old guitar in the corner. "Maya," he said, tuning the strings, "your voice didn't disappear. It's still there. We just need to help you find the door to let it out." Over the next 6 weeks, Bob rearranged his schedule to spend 3 days a week with Maya, teaching her not just music, but how to trust her own voice. Bob would play simple melodies. He wouldn't ask Maya to sing. He would just play and wait, sometimes for entire hours. And gradually, Maya would begin to hum. Just vibrations at first, no actual notes. But Bob would smile and nod. "That's it, little sister," he would say. "That's your voice saying hello to the world." By the 3rd week, Maya was humming complete melodies. By the 4th week, she was adding wordless vocals. By the 5th week, she sang her first clear sentence since the concert. "Thank you, Mr. Bob." Grace wept when she heard those words. But Bob knew the real test would come when he left Jamaica. So he did something that stunned everyone. He invited Maya to perform with him at the One Love Peace concert in April 1979, one of the most important performances of his career. Bob's management opposed the idea. "She's a child. She's unreliable. What if the psychological block returns?" Bob's response was simple. "Then we'll wait until it doesn't. But I believe in Maya." The night of the One Love Peace concert, Jamaica was torn by violence. Bob had organized the concert to promote peace. The Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition both attended. The first time they'd been in the same space peacefully. Bob performed for nearly 2 hours, and then he made an announcement nobody expected. "Please welcome my little sister, my teacher, my friend, Maya." The stadium erupted as Maya walked onto the stage, now 9 years old, wearing a white dress. She looked terrified. Her hands trembled. Bob knelt beside her. "It's okay to be scared," he whispered. "Courage isn't about not being afraid. Courage is singing even when you're afraid." he started playing Redemption Song. For the first verse, Bob sang alone. Maya stood beside him, silent, breathing deeply. The crowd waited. But then, during the second verse, Maya didn't just join in. She led. Her voice, stronger now, rang out across the stadium, clear, confident, free. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. People began crying. They saw themselves in Maya, all the ways they had been silent, all the voices they had suppressed. When the song ended, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition stood up and embraced. The image of that embrace, with Maya singing in the background, became one of the most iconic photographs in Jamaican history. After the concert, international media picked up the story. Time magazine ran a feature. The BBC produced a documentary. But Bob made sure Maya's life remained normal. He set up a trust fund for her education. But most importantly, he taught Maya that her voice was hers. Your voice isn't for everyone, he told her. Your voice is for you. If others get to hear it, that's a blessing. But never feel like you owe anyone your sound. Silence is powerful too. Speaking is powerful too. You get to choose. In 1980, Bob Marley was diagnosed with cancer. By early 1981, he knew he was dying. He returned to Jamaica one last time. And among the few people he asked to visit was Maya. She was 11 now, speaking fluently, singing in her church choir. When Maya entered Bob's hospital room, she saw how much the disease had ravaged him, but his eyes were still alive. "Little sister," he whispered, "will you sing for me?" Maya sat beside his bed and sang a song she had written herself, called Redemption's Child, about a man who taught a girl that her voice mattered. When she finished, Bob's eyes were filled with tears. "You don't need me anymore," he said softly. "Your voice is yours now. Promise me you'll use it, not just for singing, for speaking truth, for standing up, for helping others find their voices too." Maya promised. Bob Marley died on May 11, 1981, and among the performers at his memorial service was an 11-year-old girl who sang Redemption Song with a strength that made even the most hardened mourners weep. Maya didn't become an international superstar. That was never the point, but she became something perhaps more important, a voice for the voiceless. At 16, she started volunteering at a school for deaf children. At 23, she founded the Redemption Voice Academy, a music therapy center in Kingston for children with communication disorders. At 30, she spoke at the United Nations. Bob Marley taught me that every person has a song inside them. Our job isn't to force that song out. Our job is to create a world safe enough that people choose to sing. At 45, she received the Order of Jamaica. During her acceptance speech, she said, "This award belongs to a man who stopped his concert because he heard something impossible. It belongs to everyone who has ever listened, truly listened, to a voice that the world tried to silence."